In the modern day, any series can be brought back no matter how dead it may seem to be. This begs the question, can a franchise truly be killed anymore, if anything can be revived? I believe Kemono Friends Season 2 offers us an answer, but we'll get to that soon enough. Season 2 was announced to start airing on January 7th, 2019, at 26:05 in the evening, and no, I'm not making that up. Instead of saying that it would air at 2 AM on the 8th, they said it would air at 14 PM on the 7th. Classy. This reveal also came out along with this visual. The Anime News Network reported that
the new season's story begins with Serval and Caracal finding a human child in the forest. As they travel with the child, they meet new friends, uncover the secrets of Japari Park, and become involved in an event that will shake the earth.
Funnily enough, they mean that literally, more than figuratively. The new director replacing Tatsuki was confirmed to be Ryuichi Kimura, famous for the 2D anime Aikatsu, which was based on an arcade collectible card game by Bandai, whatever that means. From what little I've seen of the show, it looks adorable in a forced way. It's a happy-go-lucky story about a middle school girl who wants to be an idol and uses cards which transform into outfits. Everything is cheery and there's sparkle sound effects, and honestly I didn't even watch one full episode. It wasn't bad per se. More accurately, I don't feel good watching a show about a middle school girl dressing up for performances. That said, if you're young or into that, or maybe if the later episodes are totally different from what I saw, then hey, it's probably a totally fine show. I think the important takeaways here are that Ryuichi Kimura is skilled at directing mainly 2D animation, and his style of show is one that's really bubbly and sweet, and the biggest problems that characters have to deal with are rival middle school girls not liking their dance costumes. Stop. There's more to it, I'm not being fair here. Ryuichi Kimura might have actually been a very inspired choice. Not one of Kadokawa's design, but one of Yaoyorozu's design. In 2017, when Fukuhara said that he and Tatsuki wanted the Kemono Friends anime to be a world of peace that continues all the time, that makes the viewer feel warm and fuzzy, he cited a source of inspiration. He said that he had hoped for the anime to be something like Aikatsu, because Aikatsu is for children, and even as the story progresses, no one is suddenly killed and nothing terrible happens. Aikatsu was a direct inspiration for the Kemono Friends anime, meaning that the soon-to-be director of Kemono Friends 2 was going to be someone whose writing had influenced Tatsuki's work on Season 1. As long as Kimura could stay true to the idea that Kemono Friends was a world of peace that continues all the time, he could very well be the ideal choice of director, one who was indirectly endorsed by Yaoyorozu. The writer of Season 2 was announced to be Takiya Masamoto, who had approximately 0 writing credits. Okay, that's not fair. He wrote 1 episode of One Piece. In the film world, there's the stereotype of the filmmaker who's won a bunch of awards, but they're all from festivals no one has ever heard of before, so there's no actual standard that they can be held to, even though technically they do have experience. That's the vibe I get from this guy. Last I want to mention is Hideo Taniguchi, who would be the CG director. He was in charge of the 3D animation. He was most well known for the series Folktales from Japan, an absolutely adorable collection of folktales from, well, Japan. It's about 1 billion episodes long, but there's just one issue with it. It's 2D, not 3D. He didn't animate this part, he animated the OP. Just this paper airplane. I wish I could say that this was the dumbest paper airplane related decision in Kemono Friends, but that won't happen until 2022. But either way, this is them. This is the team that we're going with. The writer was inexperienced, the animation director had almost zero experience, and while Kimura's work may have inspired Season 1, the environment of Japari Park is completely different from the school environment that he was used to, and enormous expectations were being placed upon him because he was filling the hole left by the removal of Tatsuki. Aside from everyone appearing to like cute things, none of these people seem to have the skills which would be necessary to make a Kemono Friends follow-up, except for the sound designer, who was surprisingly carried over from Season 1. The team lacked both the style and the substance to make the show good, so the deck was being stacked against them from the start. The preview image is cute for what it's worth, but it's also noticeably different from what we've seen before. Since they threw out all the old models, they had to remake everything, and the new models have a rounder, softer appearance than the older ones had. There's nothing inherently wrong with this, but if you were a fan of the old character designs, I can't blame you for finding these new models boring and generic, like any other cutesy anime girl. It's actually really sad to read the interviews with Ryuichi Kimura regarding Season 2. He starts off so happy.
I was working on Aikatsu like always when Nobuyuki Hosoya, a producer from TV Tokyo, approached me about directing Kemono Friends 2. I was eager to have the chance to work on such a wonderful series, and also the offer came from none other than Mr. Hosoya, so I had no hesitations about accepting.
That was in November 2018. Then the hate mail started to pour in. People harassed him for taking over Tatsuki's position, and in December, he had this to say.
Frankly, I think that anyone could be the director of Kemono Friends 2. I think that everyone would be happier if they were able to enjoy an interesting anime without thinking about who created it.
And by February of 2019, halfway through the season's run, this is how he felt.
Hey, it's fine to criticize and complain, but you don't have to come into a person's mentions directly in order to do that. Do those people think that getting into a person's face and telling them how much they suck is absolute justice? People like that are frightening.
His optimism turned into anger pretty quickly, and you know what? It's not even his fault. He made a good point there. How would you like it if everyone you knew and about 1,000 people you didn't know all ran up to you and told you that you were a horrible person? You'd get pretty angry, and for what? Because you took on a directing job? He's a victim too. It's not his fault he was chosen for a job he was in no way qualified for. Making him feel bad isn't going to bring any extra happiness into the world. That behavior is the exact opposite of Tennoshi, but I guess Kadokawa had already been eroding away all of the Tennoshi from the fanbase for the previous year, so that's just a faux pas at this point. In some interviews shared by the Anime News Network, Kimura stated that,
"The structure of Kemono Friends 2 is hardly any different from the previous series, but there will be a new protagonist and a new journey."
Adding a new protagonist is fine as long as the old ones are still respected, so okay, cool. He also said that his idea for the new series was to emphasize the slice of life and healing elements that were present in the first anime. He said that he wanted to make the kind of show that you can chill out to after a hard day at work, and that he didn't want to overemphasize the science fiction elements because that could make the story too heavy. 1 month after that interview, he changed his tone completely.
I've been trying to include everything that I thought was interesting about the first series. The relaxing feeling you get from watching it after a long day of work, the science fiction elements, the simple story with a compelling mystery at the heart of it, and so on.
Alright, either he's lying to calm down the angry fans, or he's changing the show's plot last minute to try and appease people.
Kimura isn't the only staff member of Kemono Friends 2 who has been dealing with the wrath of angry fans lately. In December last year, animation producer Shinosuke Numata said that the anime production studio Tomason has been receiving various forms of harassment ever since it was revealed that they were working on the project. A fan reportedly shaved his head to protest Tatsuki's removal.
Actually, that's amazing. I'm not even mad about that one. Whether or not fans were ready for it, the first episode of Kemono Friends Season 2, technically just called Kemono Friends 2, wound up releasing on January 14th, and it completed its run on April 1st. Now, we need to be absolutely fair here, and judge Kemono Friends 2 on its own merits, not what we might have hoped it was, or out of spite because of Tatsuki being let go. It's entirely possible for a ragtag team to come out of nowhere and make something great. Everyone starts somewhere, and Kemono Friends is all about seeing the best in people, right? So let's give Kemono Friends 2 a fair review, and judge it for what it is and not what it isn't. And hopefully, we'll learn something either about the series or about ourselves and the way we view media. Let's do it. Episode 1 begins with a lot of intrigue. We're in a dilapidated old building, and we see a child stumbling out of a metal cocoon-looking thing. It's slow-paced and really basks in the moment in ways we haven't really seen before in the show. It's a clear change of direction from Season 1, and it has some real potential. The child exits the building, and the first thing you might notice is the animation. It is stuttering. At first, this might seem like a rendering issue, or maybe a deliberate choice made to replicate Season 1's rough animation style, but that wouldn't make sense since the animation of Season 1 was, if nothing else, fluid. I have a theory as to what happened here. The director was used to 2D animation, and 2D is often choppy. It works well within the medium, because 2D drawings are different enough from reality that we can fill in the blanks pretty easily. Aikatsu looks just fine, and it clearly has limited frames of animation. Drawings are already a pretty big abstraction from real life, so the choppiness isn't all that noticeable. But with 3D animation, we suddenly need it to be smoother. It's closer to the real thing, so you can't just shrug and say, well, it's only a drawing. The team was clearly less used to this 3D animation software than the 2D software they used before, and things like low frame rate and softer, rounder character designs, which are just fine in 2D, end up looking wonky in 3D. This makes it look like a lagging video game, when it would have looked normal in 2D. The frame rate is pretty inexcusable, but I can see some people preferring the rounder models from Season 2 to the more untamed models from Season 1, in theory. I say in theory because this is a show about animal girls, and the more unkempt they are, the more animal-like they are, so this cleaner, softer, rounder approach fails to represent the untamed wild that is a post-apocalyptic Japari Park. The second thing you might realize is that this is a familiar character design. This child resembles Kaban, but there's something off about him. He has the hat, the dark hair, the bag, and most notably, a single feather in his hat. This design is so obviously meant to remind you of Kaban, but the rounder face and his general dopiness clearly distinguish him as a different person. It's fine, if not good, to introduce a new character, but if you're going to do so, it would make sense to at least visually distinguish him from the old protagonist, instead of creating an objectively derivative design. Going into Kemono Friends 2, I feel the need to make a promise. I won't compare it to Season 1 unless the show itself demands it. If this child had a unique design, I wouldn't need to make a comparison. But because he borrows so many elements from Kaban, it feels necessary. There is more to say regarding his design, but I'll save that for a bit later. He stumbles into a grassy field where Caracal and Donkey are hunting Celians. They see movement and track down the one responsible for it, the child. He's afraid of Caracal, but then Celians attack, and what am I looking at? This Celian looks completely different from Season 1. They resemble video equipment, and they have this weird, cheap texture which looks straight out of a muddy PlayStation 2 game. The bubbles inside them really highlight their low poly models, and it just feels cheaper and unnecessarily different from what we had before. Even though it's a big Celian, Caracal defeats it easily, and she doesn't even have to attack its weak point like she would have had to in Season 1. Celians had gems back then, which made them vulnerable, but here there's nothing of the sort, eliminating any strategy she might have needed besides punch the monster. Despite that, one of the Celians manages to get the jump on them, but then Serval leaps in and destroys it with ease, very effectively establishing that Celians are no longer threats to these characters, and thus they offer no tension. They have a short conversation about the child's identity, and Caracal says that he reminds her of a human. Specifically, a human which Serval said she used to travel with long ago. But Serval doesn't remember that. More concerningly, when Serval looks at the kid, she has a flashback to a silhouette of Kaban, but she doesn't remember why. Do you see what's happening here? Remember all of the emotional moments when Serval and Kaban risked their lives for each other?
By now, she's probably...
Don't say that! Let's check again! She's always been incredible! I'm sure she's fine! And there's still so much we have to see! So many places we need to go! So just... give me back my friend! Kaban, wait!
Remember how much they loved each other and how Serval gave up everything she knew to stay by Kaban's side? Remember all of the #1 best-selling books released about the two of them? Well, remember how friends lose their memories when they get defeated by a Celian? That's right. They killed off Serval. Serval is dead. I can't make this up. The Serval we knew and loved from Season 1 has had her memory erased by a Celian. She doesn't remember any of her time with Kaban. And Kaban? She's nowhere to be seen. It's one thing to take a story in a new direction, but it's another thing to go against the core principles of the series. Fukuhara said that the goal of Kemono Friends was to create a work that lets you spend 30 minutes thinking, this is fun. He said even as the story progresses, no one is suddenly killed. Nothing terrible happens. But this early on, we've already basically had a main character death. And now, we're going to be worrying about what happened to Kaban for the rest of the show. It's not suspenseful, it's sad. There's a quote by one of the most famous filmmakers of all time, Alfred Hitchcock. It goes like this.
There's a distinct difference between suspense and surprise, and yet many pictures continually confuse the two. I'll explain what I mean. We are now having a very innocent little chat. Let's suppose there's a bomb underneath this table between us. Nothing happens, and then all of a sudden, boom! There's an explosion. The public is surprised, but prior to this surprise, it has been an absolutely ordinary scene of no special consequence. Now, let us take a suspense situation. The bomb is underneath the table and the public knows it, probably because they've seen the anarchist place it there. In these conditions, the same innocuous conversation becomes fascinating because the public is participating in the scene. The audience is longing to warn the characters on the screen, you shouldn't be talking about such trivial matters, there's a bomb beneath you and it's about to explode. In the first case, we've given the public 15 seconds of surprise at the moment of the explosion. In the second, we've provided them with 15 minutes of suspense.
Kemono Friends 2 did not keep us in suspense about the dangers which might separate Kaban and Serval, like the final episodes of Season 1 did, while still remaining fun. It gave us a sobering surprise, and said that things will not be okay. Okay, so Season 2 doesn't have Kaban or our Serval. Kemono Friends is missing both of its main characters. Good start. Great. Anything else? Well, probably because the director wasn't comfortable with 3D animation, the realistic animal movements from Season 1 have been removed. If Serval needs to jump, she jumps like a human. Okay. Fantastic. We have successfully removed both the Kemono and the Friends from Kemono Friends Season 2. You're doing a bang-up job, guys. So, what is in Season 2? Well, the human being named after a trivial character trait is still here. The boy's stomach growls in a very unrealistic way. And because of that, they name him Kuryu. Oh, that's going to be lovely to pronounce, since that's apparently the sound of a growling stomach. They all decide to travel the park to find Kuryu's old home, for no other reason besides that'd be a nice thing to do. In Season 1, I got the sense that Serval joined Kaban for a combination of reasons, including her being curious and also finding a companion in Kaban. But here, she just kinda decided to upend her life alongside Caracal, her best friend who is not in Season 1. They meet a duck friend who is scared of jumping over a half-foot crack, and they spend a good 2 minutes on that drama.
下ばっかり見ないで顔を上げなさい。お、キュルルちゃん、前向いて思いっきり飛べば大丈夫だよ。私たちがついてるし。
A Celian attacks, and the duck friend declares that she'll use her special skill to stop it. And her special skill ends up being the ability to lie down. That's not even an exaggeration. That's exactly what happens. Then they reach a monorail conducted by a lucky beast, and hearing their voice really hurts because it has Kaban's voice actress. But Kaban isn't here, so it feels hollow. We have a kid who looks like Kaban, the voice of Kaban, but no Kaban. I'm getting empty nest syndrome. It hurts, especially because Kuryu is a kid who appears scared and meek, but who has to go on a big adventure across the park with Serval to learn what makes him special. It's Kaban's character arc all over again, and we have to sit through it. Also notice how he hasn't done anything helpful this entire episode. In the first episode of Season 1, Kaban was meek, sure, but she also invented the paper airplane to distract the giant Celian. She had clear potential. Serval even told her that she would be fine on her own because of her ingenuity. But here, two characters are joining Kuryu because he can't survive on his own. So far, all he can be described as is a less endearing and less capable Kaban who we have to watch go through the same character arc. The next episode teaser is also disappointing. Instead of Triple P preview, we have the Japari Cafe. It has the same cute art style as the Safari Drive album booklet, but every segment features characters from Season 1, most of whom will not be showing up in Season 2. This is a very deliberate callback, and once again, it makes you miss the older characters entirely needlessly. These segments also don't have anything to do with the next episode, so they feel really tacked on, with only a title drop for the next episode at the end, making them technically qualify as previews. They're confusingly forced, and they lack an intended audience. This is a real shame, especially because the art style is so incredible. These were made by just one artist, Kikuchi Miro, and they have truly developed this style into something all their own. They have been animating in this papercraft style since before Kemono Friends, and more recently, they've been making animal fact charts and short comics, and they've even published them into books. This work is truly something special, and I only wish that this amazing art was used to enhance the world and characters of Kemono Friends 2, instead of remind us about how much we loved Season 1, when this isn't Season 1. All of these unnecessary references and parallels make it impossible to separate the two seasons. But Season 2 hasn't done anything noticeably better than Season 1, so it looks worse by comparison. Season 2 could have done its own thing to set it apart from its predecessor, like the opening scene suggested it might do. But instead, most of the new things have been downgrades, and most of the things that have been retained have served as reminders of how great the series was before. But hey, that was only the first episode. Maybe it gets better from here. Season 1 became popular after the second episode, and that could happen again. So, what is Episode 2 all about? Episode 2 is about a bamboo forest. The monorail takes the three to a forest because Kuryu has a drawing of a playground in his sketchbook. Oh yeah, so Kuryu is an artist. That's like his defining trait, although we never see him draw because that would require a lot of work to animate, so he just kinda draws stuff off screen or already had the art drawn long ago. They're visiting places drawn in his sketchbook to jog his memories and hopefully find his home. They get off at the bamboo forest and find Giant Panda. She introduces everyone to her special skill, the ability to sleep anywhere. So far, every special skill we've seen can be summed up as the ability to lie down. Really selling me on these powers, guys. Retsuko shows up and she says that she'll help them find the playground, but then she gets completely lost. Kuryu shows off his incredible character by saying thank you, and that he appreciates her for trying to help anyway. This is the most proactive thing we've seen him do so far. Normally, Serval and Caracol do all the talking, and that's just disappointing because I really liked Serval. She was always silly, but she also had a caring and optimistic side, as well as a ferocious side. However, in Season 2, Caracol is the ferocious one, and Kuryu is the caring one, leaving Serval with no defining traits except being clumsy. She was a balanced character before, but now her best traits are given to others, and she's just kinda left as a comic relief who Caracol chastises for being late sometimes. She's a one-note character now. They all are, actually, but at least Caracol has the more endearing traits. Since they couldn't find the playground on account of it being completely destroyed, Kuryu decides that they need to rebuild one. This would take too long to animate, so the episode jump cuts to them putting the finishing touch on it. This could have been a whole episode plot in Season 1. The friends spend the next few minutes playing on it, and this leans into something which I find really disgusting about Season 2, the voyeuristic nature of it. If you remember, I complimented Season 1 for avoiding the voyeuristic feeling that you're watching a bunch of animal girls act moe. The friends were in a world which wasn't suited to them, so they didn't fully understand the things which humans left behind.
Hey, check it out! There's a thingy! What is it?
This allowed them to be cute and clumsy at times, but it was never because the show wanted to highlight how moe they were. It was always because they were in a world which they weren't accustomed to living in. Besides that, they were strong in their natural habitats, and they could get things done. They could fight and climb trees, and a lot of Kabon's character arc was about learning how to be more like an animal so she could fend for herself. Kabon learned just as much from Serval as Serval learned from her. There was a sense of respect for the skills animals have and what people can learn from them. It's a great way to get people interested in the ways animals are unique and special in their own ways. In Season 2, we skip any of the building process during which the friends could have, I don't know, shown off their unique skills, and instead we cut straight to the girls all playing and acting cute. This is the exact sort of thing which Season 1 avoided, and now here we are watching animal girls act cute without any plot or character development to speak of. This makes me feel like I should be on some kinda list. It's not fun or Tenoshi, it's completely voyeuristic for the first time in the series. All of a sudden, after a good couple of minutes of anime girls laughing and playing, the playground is destroyed in an easy-to-animate dust cloud by teacups. Teacups. And teapots. Fun fact, these are stock shapes which you can find in 3D modeling programs like Blender. I'm not saying that these Celians are stock models with cheap texture slapped on them, but if they were, it would be an incredibly cheap thing to do, and also completely asynchronous, given that there is no reason why teacups would be anywhere near a bamboo forest. Giant Panda wakes up and immediately destroys all of the teacups without breaking a sweat. Instead of rebuilding the playground or doing anything else, Kuryu and company leave instantly and continued their journey on the monorail. I'd like to highlight the fact that absolutely nothing of value happened in this episode. They got off a monorail, met two pandas, built a playground, watched the playground get destroyed, and left.
私まで泣けてきちゃった。
Something I feel like I need to mention is that this anime does have themes. Kind of. There are ideas here, like Giant Panda thanking Red Panda for playing with her, and for trying to protect her when she fell asleep on the swing and it broke under her weight. But her thank you falls beyond flat because Giant Panda is more than capable of taking care of herself, and playing with her hardly counts for anything, so it comes off as more of a pity thank you than her actually acknowledging that Red Panda is good at something. It also doesn't matter because the main characters got nothing out of this whole ordeal, and we're not really going to see the pandas again, but at least there was an attempt at characterization here. Just like there was an attempt at something interesting with the title of the previous episode, Beyond Memories. Kemono Friends 2 will continue to tease interesting ideas, particularly regarding memories. But the rules are so loose regarding who remembers what, and so little is tangibly done with the theming that absolutely nothing of value comes of it. Ideally, you would imagine that the fact that Kuryu has all of these images in his sketchbook has something to do with memories of the past. Or perhaps that Serval's foggy memories of Kaban could actually amount to something meaningful and important later on. Indeed, I think they were supposed to, but they don't. Not in this. In another world, or perhaps another medium, something meaningful and maybe even powerful could come from this theme of memories. But that's a story for a different chapter. As for the anime, yeah, we're 2 episodes in and nothing of value has happened yet. In episode 3, the monorail, which I will now call the Kemonorail because it sounds good, stops at a seaside park. The gang meets bottlenose dolphin and California sea lion. They get on a boat and go out to sea because there might be something from one of Kuryu's old drawings underwater. It is there. They want to go back to land, but the oceanic friends refuse to take them back without being given a treat. Kuryu ties a ball to a fishing rod and the friends like it. They decide to bring Kuryu back to land as thanks. Then Kuryu and company leave. Imagine waiting a week for this to premiere and then seeing this. I did not leave anything of value out of my analysis. Well, aside from this line, maybe.
ごめんね。最近海のご機嫌があんまり良くないんだ。
Whatever that means. This season doesn't even have any fun or clever directing moments, like Serval's introduction in Season 1. This has the most basic reverse shot cinematography. There's nothing to work with here. They fired Tatsuki for this? This shirt on a Redbubble might have been onto something. In episode 4, the Kemonorail reaches a destroyed part of the track and they have to start traveling on foot. When they get off, there is an emotional goodbye between the group and the lucky beast who drove the Kemonorail.
Lucky-san! ここまでありがとう。いってらっしゃい。お気をつけて。行ってきます!
He has said 2 lines per episode, and they consisted of doors closing and we've arrived at our next stop. The group is in the desert to look for what's in this drawing. They think it might be a city, but all they come across is a bunch of rocks. This episode's big stop is a bunch of rocks. They meet Ardwolf, who says she's looking for a home. Then, weirdly, they meet Campo Flicker? She's here. You might remember that Campo Flicker ran the lodge in Season 1. Campo Flickers tend to travel, so okay, sure, she's here and that's fine, but since she's from Season 1, it's fair to expect her to have some deeper insight about humans or for her to at least recognize Serval, but she doesn't mention anything about Serval or reference her past at all. It starts storming, so they decide to hide in a cave. So we can do that again.
じゃあ、あそこはどうでしょう?
To be safe, we should leave after the rain stops. Okay, well then, seems like we'll be staying a little longer.
一体いつまで降るのかな? 止むのを待ってるだけの時間って退屈ですよね。じゃあ、みんなで遊ぼうよ!
Serval decides to make the best of it and entertain herself by running through the cave. Her animation is slow and it has no weight to it. She's choppily moving in and out of the darkness, and it doesn't feel like she's running. If this season only had one of the animation goofs I've mentioned, like being choppy or slow or robotic, that would be one thing, but all of these issues together make the show really hard to look at. Kuryu decides to help everyone by entertaining them. He gets out one of his pictures and tears it apart. Then he puts the scraps back together and calls it a puzzle. My partner pointed out something about this. A puzzle has to be the worst possible way to entertain cats. Serval likes climbing and running, and puzzles are literally only interesting to humans because they require you to use your mind. Puzzles are logic games. Serval should not be enthralled by a logic game. Have you ever put something on the counter and then had a cat knock it over? Because that's exactly what should happen here. Of course, Serval eats it up, and all of the friends love it. Actually, that brings up a greater quirk of the series. Kuryu being proud of being a human. Every time he meets a new friend and they ask what kind of animal he is, he says this.
僕は獣じゃなくて人だと思う。僕は獣じゃなくて人なんだけど。人!
One of the great things about Season 1 was that humans were treated like a type of advanced animal. Special animals with incredible traits, but still animals.
Whatever kind of animal I am, I guess I'm a pretty pathetic one, huh?
If a human friend returns to normal, they remain the same?
They truly are a mysterious species.
This framed the world as one where everyone had good and bad points, regardless of species. Well, throw all of that out the window. Kuryu is a human, not some stinking animal, and you better get that right. He quickly realizes he's a human in episode 1, and he makes sure to show off just how incredible humans are throughout the series. It doesn't matter that puzzles are a uniquely human thing. These friends will like it, and they will tell him how special he is. Even though Kuryu constantly needs to be helped by friends, there's always a sense that he's incredible because of the circumstances of his birth and not because of anything he actually does. He's some lost kid with a sketchbook, but yet everyone wants to talk about how cool humans are. This plays into the problem I mentioned during the playground scene. If Season 1 was about a human learning how to survive in an animal world, then Season 2 is about animals learning how to survive in a human world. Episode 2 of Season 1 focused on how the friends are able to use their special abilities to build a tool for humans to use. The focus is placed on how skillful animals can be in their habitats. Episode 2 of Season 2 is focused on the animals cutely playing on something a human knew how to build. The focus is placed on how awesome humans are to come up with these toys and how cute the animal girls are when they play on those things. By shifting the focus away from survival and instead to how great humans are, the series became less focused on teaching its viewers about how special animals can be, and more focused on being cute. Anyway, once the storm blows over, the five travel back to the rocks and see them glowing because there are glow-in-the-dark termite mounds on them. This must be what was drawn in Kuryu's sketchbook. Aardwolf decides to make a home in the cave. Kuryu gifts Campoflicker some torn-up pieces of paper, and the group moves onwards towards the jungle area. Now, did you actually know that aardwolves are insectivores? That's right, in real life, aardwolves eat insects. This could be a great reason why she would choose to live so close to the termite mounds. I learned this online, because, unfortunately, Season 2 does not care about teaching its viewers about animals, so the only way you might know this is if you did your own research. If this had even a little bit of the spark that Season 1 had, someone like Lucky Beast would have educated the viewers about this fact. But God forbid anyone learn something interesting about animals in Kemono Friends 2. I'd also like to point out that we're 4 episodes in, and the plot of this episode is that they wait in a cave for the rain to blow over, and Kuryu makes a puzzle. Episode 4 of the last season had Kaban fighting Celians in abandoned ruins alongside a cryptid. Episode 5 has the group enter a jungle. They're joined by a new jungle-themed Lucky Beast. This might sound cool, but it immediately says that it's running low on battery and will not speak unless something incredibly important happens. I didn't even know that Lucky Beasts had batteries, and now the Lucky Beast watch at the end of Season 1 makes a whole lot less sense. Of course, this is only done to manufacture drama, because the group soon meets a group of friends who don't believe Kuryu is a human. He would be able to prove it if Lucky Beast talked to him, but since this Lucky Beast conveniently shut down one scene ago, that's not gonna happen. I'd like to give a special shout out to how short the animal information is on screen. Having multiple animal bios on screen at a time, and for only a couple of seconds, ensures that there's no way to read them, once again making the actual animal side of Kemono Friends 2 a total afterthought. These friends are fighting with each other and think that a human might be able to end their dispute, so we can do that again, and they take the trio to their leader, Gorilla, who I cannot believe is seriously wearing that outfit. Like, seriously guys? Come on. Gorilla acts all tough, but as soon as her partners leave her alone, she lies down and reveals that she only acts tough in front of her comrades. So we can do that again. Only instead of being prisoners of war, this time Gorilla tells them that humans are scary. And so if Kuryu can act scary, maybe the friends in the jungle will believe that he's a human and let them continue on. The only problem is that he's terrible at acting scary, so Serval and Caracal have to pretend to be afraid. In other words, the human character is put in a position of power because of his species, even though his actions don't warrant it. They try this in front of the friends who abducted them, and they don't believe it for a second. Is this seriously the best animation you could do? It doesn't fool the friends, but it works anyway because the friends remember hearing stories about humans controlling animals, and the gang's acting is so bad that the friends assume Kuryu must be mind controlling them. That doesn't solve the dispute between the friends though, so he and Gorilla have a one-on-one, talking about how humans are supposed to act, and that gives him an idea. The idea was to actually use a shader. No, actually, the idea is for Kuryu to act creepy and tell the friends that humans do have the ability to control animals. In fact, he says humans used to force animals to fight on their behalf. With a board game. It's a game where friends punch a table with paper cutouts of themselves on it, and whoever's piece falls over first loses. Everyone loves it, except for this angry friend in chains who falls from the sky and destroys everything. She's just here now. Everyone stands there in terror, which I guess I can't really blame them for. I mean, there was no build-up to this. I'd be pretty stunned too. But you know who I bet could have gotten them out of this? Who could have helped? Kaban. No, seriously. I don't understand what they were thinking with Kuryu's character. Season 1 so carefully built up the relationship between Kaban and Serval. It ended with Serval upending her whole life to stay beside her friend. Remember when I said this? Just like in episode 1, the curious cat isn't going to leave her friend, and they get to head into the future together, even if it means leaving everything she knows behind. Serval would rather stay by her friend's side because that's what it means to be friends through thick and thin. Yeah, that was true. In season 1, but not here. Why even bother getting us so invested in these characters if you're going to throw them away? And if you are going to throw them away, why would you constantly remind us of that better relationship? Kuryu is a discount Kaban. He has the feather, and he's a human looking for a location. His special skill is his big human brain allowing him to come up with plans. He's just Kaban, except we're nearly halfway through the series, and his biggest contribution so far has been him tearing up a piece of paper. Season 1 ended in such a good place. It was easy to imagine Kaban and Serval going to mainland Japan and trying to survive in the human world. Or they could have stayed in the park, but gone on new adventures together. I'm already endeared to their characters, and know the love they have for each other. If you wanted to make a standalone season 2, why bring up Serval's faint memories of Kaban in episode 1? Was that just the writer's way of saying that we should forget about everything that happened before, just like Serval has? So that we can embrace this new, amazing storyline about a kid who has done nothing of note yet? I don't know. Maybe I should be happy that Kaban isn't in season 2. Seeing what happened to Serval's character, there's reason to believe that they would have butchered Kaban's character too. But then again, why does Kuryu resemble her so much? It really boils down to, if you want to have a great, new, original story, then do it. But don't constantly remind us of what we're missing. Don't have a new protagonist who's just Kaban but less interesting. Don't keep Kaban's voice actress as the voice of Lucky Beast. Don't reference this scene. By referencing Kaban so much, all they're doing is spitting in the face of everyone who loved her and Serval's relationship as much as I and evidently tens of thousands of fans also did. What could they have possibly gained from this writing choice? And what even happened to Kaban? Is she alive? Is she in another part of the park? Why was she removed from the show? How was removing her considered to be a good idea by anyone in charge? When does all of this even take place? And most of all, where is Kaban? What? Oh. There is Kaban. Episode 6 starts immediately where episode 5 left off. That's actually a weirdly annoying thing about this show's structure. It has this minute of recounting what happened in the last episode before having another minute of original content, and then the opening theme plays. Typically, you would either not have a previously on segment, since season 1 didn't have one, or you would at least have the opening play before introducing new content. The opening itself is also really confusing. It's a catchy song, but it's about Serval, Araisan, Fennec, and Pepapu. All except for Serval have not shown up in season 2 yet. Normally an opening theme introduces the main characters, but okay, you do you. At least the song itself is fun on its own. This relates back to what I was saying earlier about Dobutsu Biscuits being the new de facto faces of the franchise, even though they haven't done very much. Oh, but where are we? Oh, yeah, Kaban's back. Guys, Kaban is back. I probably should be angry, but I'm honestly just too happy that she's back to even be mad. It's like going to a party that actually blows, but then halfway through it, your best friend shows up so you can watch it blow together. That probably didn't sound right, but who even cares? Kaban is back! She runs off screen and then comes out of nowhere with the Japari bus. It's back too! Everyone gets on board and she books it out of the jungle. Even though this is far from what I would call action-packed, it's easily the best thing in the whole season up until now. Kaban even immediately figures out that Kuryu is a human. She's sharp, seems to be able to get out of any dangerous situation, and her new design is absolutely fantastic. She's older and her hair has grown out, but she styles it to still look short. She has her old shirt, but she's also added a sweater to it, which resembles a lab coat. It's an excellent evolution of her design, which conveys that she's still the same person, but with so many more years of experience added on. In a season full of dopey, overly cutesy characters, she has this brilliant, understated confidence about her. The second you see her, you know she's the most capable person in the park by far, and she also feels like an entirely natural evolution from her season 1 self. She learns so much in season 1, and it only makes sense that when season 2 rolls around and you see the world from another character's perspective, Kaban suddenly looks like a superhero. It's a shame that she never got to find other humans, but if she had to stay at the park, at least she became the coolest person to ever be in the park. Kaban has completely stepped into the role that Mirai once held, and even surpassed her, fully completing her character arc. She takes them to her house, which is actually a laboratory, and guess who's there? The owls. They're her assistants. Isn't that awesome? She serves the group dinner, which is a great callback to season 1. It's also good attention to detail, how a chemical burner is used to heat the food. The writers were really on their A game today. If only this had been episode 2, instead of being episode 6. Kaban shows Kuryu what she's been working on, a study on Celium. Now, what is Celium? It's, a second retcon. Okay, so like, remember how Celians were originally from outer space? And then they were retconned to be created when Sandstar touched inorganic matter? So now it's been retconned again, so they're actually created when Sandstar hits Celium, which is this stuff, and it's found in volcanoes. Everyone goes to sleep except for Kuryu, who decides to read a book with the same name as episode 3 to see if he can figure out the exact origin of Celium. It's from volcanoes, but Kaban has noticed Celians popping up near waterfronts. Volcanoes are fiery, not watery, so it doesn't make sense. Kuryu has a flashback.
イルカさん言ったでしょ最近海のご機嫌が良くないってほら来たわよえ
Remember? I told you that this would be the only thing of importance from episode 3. From this flashback, Kuryu manages to figure out what the smartest person in the park couldn't. Celium comes from volcanoes, which are underwater. The owls immediately take him to the ocean to collect some samples, specifically without telling anyone that they're leaving. Then, a Celium sample grows too big for its container for some reason, and it turns into the Japari bus, since it was nearby. Kaban, Serval, and Caracal wake up, and think that Kuryu and the owls must have been eaten by the Celian, which has to be some of the most manufactured drama possible for the second episode in a row. Things have really gone to crap in the last 30 seconds, wouldn't you say? Kuryu picks up a sample from the ocean and brings it back to the lab. Meanwhile, Serval leaps on top of the Celian, then leaps back off of it, then she says that she can't defeat it because she can't get close to it, then she jumps back on it, and punches it once and it explodes into pieces. Then Kuryu returns home safe and sound because the drama is over now. Am I having an aneurysm? With that, Kuryu says that he needs to keep looking for his home, and Kaban bids him farewell. As he leaves, Kaban watches Serval, and Caracal asks Kaban if she's the human who traveled with Serval in the past.
昔変なフレンズと一緒に旅をしてたってえ置いてっちゃうぞあの子よろしくねあ
Wait, why don't you take care of her yourself? What, are you too busy to help your friend? Is Kaban, who nearly gave up her life twice to save Serval, too busy for her all of a sudden? Oh, I see. Kaban isn't going with them, is she? No way. She's just another disposable side friend, like the rest of them. Last episode they visited the jungle area, and they met Gorilla. And this episode, they visited the Kaban area, and met Kaban. We waited 5 episodes to see Kaban. And she's not joining the group. She's leaving. Guys, Kaban is leaving. Imagine being a Japanese office worker who watched season 1 at 1:30 a.m. because it gave you peace after a long day of work. And now, after a month and a half of watching season 2, Kaban shows up, and she leaves like it's not even important to the story. I probably sound angry, but this is objectively stupid writing. Like, I am offended. So Kaban's gone. Kaban is gone. I have no idea how they thought this was an acceptable idea. But, well, let's continue the series, I guess. Without its main character. Alright, we need to pause here. Let's take a breather. It's really difficult to discuss Kemono Friends 2, because there are two different possible perspectives, and they're at odds with each other. The first perspective is that of a first-time viewer. So far, that's the experience I've been trying to convey. The disappointment, the betrayal, the confusing direction, the attempts at themes that never quite work, and the immediately repulsive animation. But then there's the other perspective. A meta-perspective, looking back at what the anime wanted to accomplish and how it failed. I've been holding back on this behind-the-scenes perspective because it's full of spoilers, but the only way to truly understand Kemono Friends 2 is to examine what it was trying to do, and then to compare that to what it actually did. So, here we go. This is the moment when we look into the kitchen to see how the sausage got made. This is what Kemono Friends 2 tried to do. Kemono Friends 2 is a story about memories. This is why episode 1 is called Beyond Memories, and why Kuryu is following his sketchbook to find his home. He doesn't remember his home, but he's trying to piece together his place in the world like he would a puzzle. That's the relevance of the cave scene in episode 4. Kuryu tore up his picture, and the friends put it back together again, like a puzzle, and Aardwolf decided to live in the cave because she formed good memories with the main characters there. The world is an unfinished puzzle, and the friends and Kuryu are putting the pieces together by traveling with each other. Moreover, Serval lost her memories of Kaban, but Kaban remembers Serval. Kaban has to live with the knowledge that her best friend is adventuring without her, and Serval has to live with the constant feeling that someone important to her is missing, and that missing part of her will always linger in her heart. The Celian at the lab took the form of the Japari bus, which Kaban had strong memories of, and as we'll see in the following episodes, Celians take the form of objects that humans have strong memories of. In all of these ways, the show is very clearly about memories. The problem is, why? What does this reveal about the characters? Is it supposed to reveal something about the dark side of memories? Like characters haunted by their pasts? It doesn't explore that. And Serval and Kaban's memories of each other? Does it explore that? No, Serval barely mentions Kaban after this point, and Kaban isn't a main character in Season 2. The theme of memories has so much potential, and it seeps into every corner of this season. But the anime has nothing meaningful to say about memories. It's empty. The theme is hollow. So then, it's logical to ask, how? How could such a brilliant theme amount to nothing? We don't have enough information to determine who gave the order, but we do have evidence that Kemono Friends 2 was sabotaged. It's a strong word, but let me present my case. Kemono Friends World was an event that was held at the main office for Parco, a department store chain in Japan. On June 10th, 2019, the Redditor Talon925 compiled new information that was revealed at the event regarding the lore of Kemono Friends 2, and some of this info was, well, you're going to want to hold on for some of it. The setting of Kemono Friends 2 takes place 2,000 years after the incident in Park Central. This takes place 2,000 years after the mobile game? Well, not actually, but that's what we thought for a while. But okay, now for Kuryu's backstory. The boy who became the base for Kuryu was taken in by the Celian Queen. Serval, Caracol, and Mirai were there when Kuryu was attacked by the Celian Queen. Because only Serval and Caracol used it, they couldn't defeat her even with Chemo Harmony, since they needed 5 people with Chemo Harmony. Seeing this, Mirai told Caracol and Serval to retreat, but Serval refused, determined to save Kuryu. The moment Serval punched the Celian Queen, Serval turned into a beast. Kuryu was saved, but lost some of his memory. Serval returned to her animal form afterwards. After humanity perished, he was the first human that the Celian Queen produced, a perfectly restorated copy. In the past, he was a boy who was attacked by the queen while on a family vacation. Because she only copied his heart, the boy safely returned home, living together with his family until he passed away of old age. He's purely human, and is not a Celian. When Mirai parted with Serval for the second time, the Celian queen turned back into a crystal. The pod-like objects that Kuryu woke up in at the beginning of the second anime were the queen's eggs. That's right. Kuryu was born from the alien egg of the Celian queen. He's a perfect copy of a human who died 2,000 years ago, and humanity is extinct. When this information came out, a lot of people, understandably, had trouble accepting it. There's no way this is canon, right? Well, during a recent event at the Osamu Tezuka Manga Museum, this information was confirmed to be true. Not only was 2,000 years clearly stated, but the museum event revealed something shocking. A storyboard, drawn by Yoshizaki himself, for a deleted scene that was originally going to be part of Kemono Friends 2. This scene is brilliant. It depicts the exact events shared at the Parco promotion. It reveals that the Serval who was defeated by the Celian Queen was second generation, and the Serval from the Lodge episode of Season 1 was third generation. It also reveals that the Friends had defeated Celian Queens before, meaning that the incident happened after the events of the Nexon game. This scene adds so much to the lore of the series. It reveals Kiryu's origin. It bridges the gap between the Nexon game, Season 1 and Season 2. And it's sad. Like, really heart-wrenching, especially compared to the rest of Season 2. And somehow, this is a deleted scene, even though scenes like this were retained. How on earth did this happen? Well, here's one possibility. This scene is sad. Disproportionately sad. Like a 2-minute clip from No Country for Old Men that was just injected into an episode of Dora the Explorer. And then, remember that director Kimura stated that he didn't want to overemphasize the science fiction elements because that could make the story too heavy. Now look, I went on a long spiel earlier about how Kimura was a victim too, and I stand by it. We don't have enough information to confirm that Kimura nixed this scene because it was too heavy for his lighthearted show. And even if that had been confirmed, it still wouldn't warrant the abuse that he experienced. What we do know is that Season 1 was written by Tatsuki and Yoshizaki working together, that Season 2 was written by Kimura and Yoshizaki, that Kimura stated on record that he didn't want the anime to be too heavy, and that Yoshizaki storyboarded a beautiful and heavy scene that gave significant context to the events of Kemono Friends 2, and that scene was, for some reason, removed. It's possible that Kadokawa ordered the scene to be removed, or that the scene was so tonally inconsistent with the rest of the anime that many people wanted to remove it. Although, given that this scene is referenced with exact dialogue in the later Kemono Friends 2 manga, there's reason to believe that someone with authority at Kadokawa wanted the scene to be included very badly. Badly enough that they preserved the storyboard and made it available to the writer of the manga. The point of this aside is to highlight 7 things. First, Kemono Friends 2 has the central theme of memories, although it does not explore the theme in any meaningful way, instead sprinkling it into the narrative, like a hint of salt in a meal that's all too sweet. Second, Kuryu is a spawn of the Celian Queen. Third, the anime takes place at least 2,000 years after the events of the Nexon mobile game, and humanity has since gone extinct. Fourth, a deeply sorrowful and shocking scene was storyboarded by Yoshizaki that delved into these concepts. Fifth, Kimura stated that he did not want the anime to be too heavy. 6th, these fascinating and lore-driven concepts were never confirmed nor developed upon within the anime, with Yoshizaki's scene being cut from the story. And 7th, these concepts are still present within the lore, and they have been referenced several times throughout the years. Lastly, we need to discuss Kuryu's design. It was revealed in the Tezuka Museum art book that the point of his design was to be standard, generic, someone who doesn't stand out. His hat is from the Japari Park gift shop. All of his accessories are different shades of blue because they're all from different brands, but in the same style. And he was even meant to look androgynous, as his ponytail was added to prevent him from appearing too boyish. This is almost brilliant, but it takes a sharp left turn. The implication here is that he represents all humans. Unlike Kaban, who was based on a specific human, this child could be any one of us. Heck, maybe he's an artist because of how many fan artists the series has. Kuryu is meant to be representative of all of us, and his ability to bring friends together and form positive memories with them is wish fulfillment. Us fans getting to impact the world of Kemono Friends and build strong memories with the series. Although it's a charitable reading, this might even be another reason why the backstory scene was deleted. It gave this specific child too much character, and so it made him less representative of the average viewer. All of this is great, really. I mean, maybe not cutting that scene, but at least that's understandable in this context. The problem is, if Kuryu is meant to be a generic stand-in for the audience, then what makes him special? Why should we care about his journey? Is it simply because he's a human? If so, then refer to my earlier argument that Season 2 doesn't focus enough on animals. Also, if his design was specifically made to have as few defining traits as possible, then what do we as an audience have to latch onto? Probably his hat, which again resembles Kaban's. Or maybe his extremely round face, which does not play well with the 3D camera lens. When you compare the models from Seasons 1 and 2, it is amazing just how much more detailed Season 2's are. In a vacuum, Season 2's Serval looks so much better than Season 1's. It's hard to even compare the two. Yet, in motion, Season 1 Serval is able to emote so much more effectively, because the most distinctive parts of her design stand out. Her tall ears, shaded hair, and splayed dress draw your eyes to the unique parts of her design. I never noticed that her chest and upper body look absolutely terrible, because, honestly, her chest was never the part being emphasized. Season 2's model is so much more detailed, but all of the different details end up fighting for attention. Her hair is less detailed, but her chest is more detailed, so which should I focus on? She's taller, which allows for more details to be added, but it also de-emphasizes her tall ears. So what's more important then, her height or her tall ears? Season 1 unambiguously answers that her ears matter more, but it isn't so clear in Season 2. Even though her model is far more detailed, her unique aspects stand out less. Now, take that issue and apply it to a character who was purposefully designed to look average. Your eyes will scramble to find any hint of uniqueness in his bland design, and ultimately, your eyes will eventually be drawn to his weirdly bulbous face and his derivative hat, because what else is there to focus on? And that's just his appearance. If he's meant to be a stand-in for the viewers, then should I relate to his whiny personality? His crying? His failure to stand up for himself? If these traits aren't relatable to you, then his character is going to fall really flat. I don't want to view myself in this kid, so the whole idea that he represents humanity and thus the viewers? Darn, I don't want to relate to that. I kind of feel like you're insulting me. I mean, even being an artist, which potentially is a reference to the fact that there are so many Kemono Friends fan artists out there. He's not drawing good or detailed art. He spends about 2 seconds on each drawing because it just cuts to it being done. And the drawings are cute, mediocre, bad. If this is what the show thinks its viewers' art looks like, then dang, that's just sad. This is insulting. All that to say, if he is meant to be a stand-in for the viewer, then the anime is portraying me as someone who I don't like. And if he is not meant to be a stand-in, then his design was made to be generic on purpose. That all said, it's time to get back to the anime itself. We're going to... Wait a minute. Wait, okay. Just a moment. In the backstory, a Generation 2 serval was defeated by the Celian Queen. The Generation 3 serval that they met afterwards is specifically stated to be a different serval, and that's the serval from the Lodge episode of Season 1. The serval in that season says that it could be a different serval in the recording, but her crying suggests that they're actually the same serval after having her memories wiped by the Black Celian. This must be the same serval from Kemono Friends 2 because of her faint memories of Kaban. So, timeline-wise, there's a Generation 2 serval who was defeated by a Celian queen while rescuing the child who would become the basis for Kuryu. Then a Generation 3 serval fought a Black Celian and was defeated, but she would be reborn as the Season 1 serval via Sandstar. At some point, this serval would be defeated again and then reborn as the Season 2 serval. But it's highly implied by the Kemono Friends 2 manga that the Season 2 serval has faint memories of being defeated by the Celian Queen who was attacking the child. So wait, are these the same serval or not? Either the Season 1 serval actually has no connection to the Generation 3 serval in the recording, so her tears are meaningless and she has no connection to the final enemy of Season 1, or the dialogue in the manga being lifted from the deleted scene was completely coincidental and the manga depicted a totally different serval being defeated, in which case, this serval has no connection to the child in Season 2. Maybe it's a good thing that this scene was cut. Even when Kemono Friends 2 does something good, it still manages to ruin something else. That's enough lore for now. It's time to discuss the second half of Season 2, and we're going to do it the same way that we discussed the first half, as if we're new viewers, experiencing it episode by episode without any knowledge about what was originally planned behind the scenes. But don't forget about everything that we uncovered. There were people involved who wanted to tell a meaningful story about how the past affects the present. If that theme isn't made clear by the analysis, then, well, that's why people were mad. Kimura was correct when he said that everyone would be happier if they were able to enjoy an interesting anime without thinking about who created it. Unfortunately, it's not clear if this is, in fact, an interesting anime. Episode 7 features the gang wandering aimlessly through a desert. Kuryu has a drawing of a smear. Great job there, really earning your keep. Then some other smears run past. It's Cheetah and her racing rival Pronghorn, and Pronghorn's groupie, Roadrunner, who is based on the Looney Tunes character. I honestly love her design. Cheetah is Pronghorn's rival because they're both fast runners, but Pronghorn has a crush on Cheetah, and Roadrunner has a crush on Pronghorn, but Pronghorn sees her only as a friend. Nothing comes of this. They try racing down a path to see who's faster, and Serval decides to race with them. They race directly towards a lake because I guess they didn't know there was a lake there, in their territory. Roadrunner freaks out that they might fall in the water and drown, and she somehow reaches them in time to warn them, and they manage to stop just in time. but then Serval zooms in and runs into them and they fall into the lake, which ends up not being a problem since the lake is only hip deep. None of that had any stakes whatsoever. They need to find a new way to race which doesn't lead to a cliff, because apparently that's what we're doing in this episode. They just kind of decided that these friends are what's happening this week, I guess. Kuryu decides to invent relay races in a circular track. Then why does she suck so bad at it? Pronghorn jumps over a tree branch and makes a big deal about being good at jumping over tree branches. The friends who aren't racing watch from this tree, but supposedly these friends are running really fast, and yet nobody has any issue seeing them from like a mile away. Then a Celian attacks, and it looks exactly like the bus again. Everyone teleports to Pronghorn, and she and Cheetah immediately stop to avoid being attacked. Then Pronghorn trips on a tree branch and falls. Good thing we established that she's bad at dodging tree branches. It would make no sense if she was good at it. Cheetah picks her up because they're gay for each other, and she's like, "Baka," and then Serval punches the bus, and it explodes. Really struck that weak point, huh, Serval? They explain that there is a tractor nearby, and that must have been what the Celian took the shape of. Celians in this canon take the form of any object which humans have a strong attachment to. You know, because of the power of humans. Since all the humans we've seen have loved this tractor, which we were introduced to way back in one scene from now, the Celian copied it, and now the group is taking that tractor to the next area. Kuryu has a Lucky Beast watch which Kaban gave to him, and it reacts with the tractor, which has this specific watch icon on it. So apparently Kaban modified all of these vehicles? Next episode. Episode 8 starts with these detectives. These guys are losers. Like, we saw them back in episode 4, and this happened. They've actually been in a couple of scenes up until now hunting Kuryu, but they've also done literally nothing of note so far. You're going the opposite direction from the tracks! Kuryu and company make it to the live stage, where Margay and Pepapu are located. This is episode 8. Again. Margay is hosting auditions for a play to put on before the Pepapu concert. Everyone is purposefully bad. Of course, she doesn't like any of them, and when Margay sees Serval, she decides to cast her in the play instead. This is for a really good reason. If you remember back in season 1, Serval was responsible for Margay getting her dream job. Serval might not remember Margay because her memory was wiped, but it's okay, because Margay doesn't remember Serval either. She doesn't mention Serval even once. Did you even watch season 1? Wait, but she does remember becoming their manager. Maybe I could have assumed that her memory was wiped too, but not anymore. Wait, 5 penguins? Generation 3's debut concert was the first one to have 5 penguins in it, and that was the one where she became their manager. She couldn't possibly have seen 5 penguins before becoming their manager.
I couldn't miss their first big live event. They have more volume together than when it was only 4 girls in the whole group, you know?
This was an integral part of Princess's character arc last season.
There's never been a royal penguin in the group before, so why would they even need me?
We need a new member, if we're going to surpass our predecessors.
Seriously, did you watch season 1? Because it doesn't seem like you did. Serval gets cast as the hero of the play, and Caracol gets cast as the Celian.
セルリアンどこにあなたのことですよここに出てきてああはい
Which might genuinely be the best moment so far.
パークでは人とフレンズが仲良く楽しく遊んでいました
The play suddenly goes live, and Serval is just on stage now. But Caracol is having a hard time putting the costume on, even though she just had it on like 1 scene ago. Because of this, she won't be able to hit her cue on time. Also, it's separate, but in the audience we can see Island Fox. She'll become important later. Luckily, an actual Celian shows up, but Serval thinks it's Caracol, since Caracol is famous for her ability to fly. Then Pepapu walks on stage during an actual attack on their lives, and they just pose there instead of fighting. Then Serval and Caracol destroy the Celian together, and Pepapu immediately starts singing their new song with infinitely smoother animation than the rest of the series has. Is it just me, or is the pace of these episodes getting less and less consistent? The concert ends, and Serval and Caracol realize that Kuryu has been missing since the concert started. It turns out, he was kidnapped by the detectives. Episode 9 starts with the detectives' wooden cage collapsing on its own. They tell Kuryu to stand up and follow them, and he refuses.
とにかく僕はここから動かないきっとサーバルとカラカルが探してくれるはずだからどうする
Our hero is sitting here, saying that other people will come save him, so he doesn't have to do anything himself. On page 57 of Manga in Theory and Practice by famous mangaka Hirohiko Araki, he writes this.
A protagonist must not only be virtuous, but a hero as well. And if there's one criterion for a hero, it's being alone. When a protagonist is faced with an ultimate dilemma, it must be one that only the protagonist can solve, and the protagonist must solve it with their own abilities.
What a stand-up guy, letting other people solve his problems for him. I'll get to it later, but Kuryu's arc has more in common with a villain arc than a hero arc. Just keep that in the back of your mind for now. The detectives were hired by a client, and that client shows up. It's Domestic Dog. She hugs Kuryu. It's literally just a kid's dog, and she misses humans.
この日をどれだけ待っていたことかなんかいいことしたみたいだねですね
She takes him back to her doghouse. It's a house that looks like a dog, get it? Now we get a lore dump.
ここはずっと昔何人もの人がいたんです私も一緒によく遊んでいましたでもある日みんないなくなってしまってでもいつかここに戻ってきてくれると思ってましただから一人でずっとお留守番してたんです
Alright, so, after the Black Celian attacked the park, the humans had to leave. This dog friend was left behind, and since dogs bond so much with humans, again, humans are the friggin' master race according to this season, this dog friend was left alone and depressed. Again, remember Fry's dog from Futurama? Yeah, that's basically her. She wanted Kuryu here specifically so that she could connect with a human again, after years of being abandoned. That's actually a genuinely moving reason to kidnap a child. Serval and Caracol find the detectives and hire them to take them back to Kuryu. They take the girls back and they see Kuryu making the best of the situation by playing frisbee with Domestic Dog. Caracol is mad at him for being kidnapped without telling her that he was leaving. and then Domestic Dog apologizes for kidnapping him, and then Caracol leaves because she hates Kuryu now, and oh, what is even happening in this show anymore? Kuryu and Domestic Dog talk about how that evil tiger from before is an abused animal, and everyone is afraid of her. Then they hear this scream. After that scream, they decide to calmly talk for another 30 seconds. Okay, it sounded pretty close, like it was coming from the same room as them, but I guess the beast isn't actually nearby. Maybe it was a non-diegetic sound. Then they say that the tiger is outside nearby, so they need to leave the house. Oh, so apparently that sound came from about 100 feet away. Of course it did. That's what it sounded like. Kuryu goes after Caracol and gets attacked by Tiger, who Domestic Dog defends him from. Serval and Caracol remember that they actually like Kuryu for some reason, and they track him down. Meanwhile, Dog is getting absolutely destroyed, but Serval confronts Tiger and gives her a death stare. Oh, that actually worked? Okay. Domestic Dog feels bad about being unable to protect Kuryu, and says that she should probably just go home and wait for humans to return.
私もあのうちにいた人たちが戻ってくるまでお留守番を続けます。それが私に課せられた使命ですから。
いえ、犬さん。
This is a good opportunity for Kuryu's optimism to save the day. We know that he's helped friends who felt useless before, and this dog absolutely loves him. If she goes home, she'll probably just be waiting there until the end of time and literally die alone. Her life will be over if she goes home, and Kuryu has the chance to save this dog's life. Alright, Kuryu, take it away.
お家にお帰り。
Or he could say that. He abandoned a dog. I hate this kid. Some people might say that I'm being too harsh on Kuryu. I know that he wasn't written to be a bad person, but that doesn't mean his actions aren't bad. If a character acts like a sociopath, and all the other characters validate him, that doesn't change the fact that he's a sociopath. All it means is that the character is poorly written. For example, Domestic Dog asks Kuryu to tell her to go home. Him telling her to go is thus presented as a good thing. He's granting her wish. However, she was also badly beaten, and she was in an emotional state. We then see her alone, at home, in the dark, during the post-credit scene of episode 12. So there were tangible negative consequences for her going home. She was clearly not in a stable enough condition to make a rational decision about staying or leaving. And even though the show tries to make Kuryu look like a wish granter, his decision lacked empathy, and it overtly harmed her. Imagine if Serval had treated Princess like this in Season 1. Princess was also in an emotional state and wanted to leave her group. But Serval dragged her to the stage, and she saw how much the other penguins appreciated her. If Kuryu had been there, he would have left her alone, and she never would have recovered. He wouldn't have been considered a hero because he respected her desire to be left alone. He would have been considered heartless for abandoning her in her time of need. Domestic Dog overtly loves him because he's an all-important human, not because of his own actions, and he uses his power over her carelessly. In fact, isn't this exactly what the friends in the jungle were talking about? Humans manipulating animals to fight for them? That was presented as a terrifying thing that Kuryu subverted when he instead had them play a fighting game. But in this episode, 3 animals fight on his behalf because of their enormous love for humans, and he leaves the most injured one behind. I have to wonder if the online negativity that Kimura experienced ended up affecting the writing, because this is genuinely nasty if you think about it. You might say, well, this show is just for kids, you're not supposed to think about it that deeply, but oh, that's where you would be wrong. I was stunned to read his interview with New Type, where he stated that the show was primarily targeted at adults. Yeah. Presumably because of the late night fanbase that Season 1 had amassed, Season 2 was written with an older audience in mind, and Kimura admitted that he struggled to maintain a balance between the sci-fi plot and a light tone. Even if the show often feels juvenile, it was written for adults, so it's fair to expect the writing to hold up to scrutiny. Episode 9, perhaps more than any other, does not. In episode 10, Serval, Caracal, and Kuryu are lost, so they decide to go to a hotel. They will not leave this hotel for the rest of the season. They check in.
何これ面白い私もやりすぎだってばお待たせしました
and get a short tour of the gift shop. Okinawan Habu is the best, but you wouldn't know it from this season.
やぶをつっつかなくても出てくるのが俺だぜ。私の尻尾に噛みつくな。おいおい、これは噛みついたわけじゃない。ハムハムだ。じゃあハムハム禁止で。そんな。暇だわ。お掃除お掃除。本当に綺麗好きだね、豚さん。こんなボロホテル今さら綺麗にしたってしょうがねえだろ。相変わらず特別なんだから支配人に聞こえたら怒られますよ。大丈夫だって、いくらあの耳でもこのぐらいの声じゃ聞こえてるわよ。ひっ、もう耳からさ。じゃじゃーん。ささ、どうぞどうぞ。まあこれは可愛らしいですわ。ハムそいつ俺だと思って可愛がってくれよな。いやちょっとハブさんだと思って。ハムハム。私のはないんですかね。ないみたいだね。そうですか。旅のお供にもらっていこうかと思ったのに残念です。俺のはまだいっぱいあるよ。一つどう？いえ、結構です。
I would buy one. I would treat that plush with love. Kuryu bonds with Passenger Pigeon, an animal which is extinct because they lived in groups who were easy to hunt. They were driven to extinction by humans, and yet she isn't a beast like Tiger, who became untamed because she was abused by humans. Kuryu draws a picture of all the friends he met during this catastrophe of a journey, and gives it to her as a gift. Thanks, I guess. That isn't going to make her feel alone at all. Back at the lab, Kaban discovers the secret to life. The strength of a Celian is based on the strength of the bond which a human had with the object the Celian copied. Good thing Kuryu didn't give away a drawing of every single friend he made literally 5 seconds ago. Was this show being made up as they were writing it? Kuryu is sad because he doesn't know if he'll ever find home, and Serval tells him that his friends are his home, and he gets mad at her and trips into the water. Good story, 10 out of 10. Episode 11 starts with him in the water, and he talks to these stupid ghost birds who tell him that he sucks.
なんで笑うの？まさかあいつとも分かり合えると思ったのか？そういう浅はかなところが人の長所でもあり短所でもある。これを返すのは2度目だな。
Oh yeah, they've been returning his sketchbook to him since he's dropped it multiple times. He wakes up on the shore. He was brought there by Bottlenose Dolphin, who happened to be nearby because she was called to the hotel by the professor. Why even have stakes when the solution happens to be nearby? They get the message that Celians are born from humans' strong bonds, which means Kuryu's drawing is very dangerous. They rush into the hotel to destroy the drawing, but whoa, a giant Celian which looks like a cruise ship is underwater and crashing into the hotel. One hit from it is enough to flood the entire bottom floor, since the hotel is partially underwater and the employees flee to the surface. Another hit and this place would be toast. Luckily, Kuryu actually ends up saving the day, but it's not because of anything he was trying to do. The Celian slips through a crack in the glass and touches the drawing before the friends can reach it. The implication, which we don't actually see animated, is that the Celian transforms into the friends in the drawing so the ship disappears. The only good thing he did is a consequence of something bad he did. Great. Kaban is driving every friend in the season to the hotel, and that's taking forever. We get this scene where Hululu falls off the trailer, but then she gets back on it and nothing happens. Then there's a cute scene of Jaguar and Pronghorn being gay, but again nothing happens. Then everyone raids the hotel and battles their doppelgangers. This could be a really emotional or at least a difficult battle.
今ですか？いいから。
Or they can be defeated with a spin dash. They're complete jokes, apparently. Gee, if these Celians get their power from the bonds of humans, then Kuryu must really not care about any of these friends at all, huh? Kuryu spends most of this episode running in a hallway so he can reach the drawing to stop Celians from spawning. What he's most worried about is the drawing of Tiger. She's evil, remember? That makes her scarier. Just imagine what would happen if a Celian copied her. Episode 12 is the finale, and Kuryu gets the drawing back and finds everyone on the roof. Celian versions of Serval and Caracal appear, and since Kuryu had a strong bond with them, these Celians should actually be impossibly powerful. So powerful, in fact, that the friends call Kuryu useless and tell him to leave because he can't handle this problem by himself. He agrees to leave. In the finale of Season 1, we thought Kaban was dead because of her sacrifice to save Serval. Here, Kuryu is running away. There's this stupid callback to the 6-inch crack from Episode 1.
だから嫌がってんのね。キュルルの弱虫。違うよ。キュルルちゃん、思いっきり飛べば大丈夫だよ。ここは任せて。うん。大丈夫なんです。行って、キュルル。
Season 1 had a callback to its first episode as well, with Kaban struggling to climb a tree in the first episode, but willingly climbing one out of her own desire to save Serval in episode 11. It demonstrated her character growth, and not everyone can climb a tree in real life anyway, so you can't fault her for struggling at first. In Season 2, Kuryu needs to be encouraged to leap over a crack which is smaller than he is during episode 1. In episode 12, he still needs encouragement to do the exact same thing. He needs encouragement to give him the confidence to run away.
なあ、キュルル、あんたは先に下に降りて避難しなさい。ここは私たちが何とかするよ。そんな、みんなを残して僕だけなんて。
そうだな。足の遅い奴がいても邪魔なだけだ。
Good thing none of the Celians will attack during dialogue. He gets on a boat with Kaban, but realizes that he feels bad for abandoning his friends.
原因を作ったのは僕なのに。僕は何もできない。これがお前の望んだことか？自分で生み出したものをあいつらに押し付け、皆を危険にさらしたかったのか？違う！だったら答えろ。なぜお前はそれを書いた？なぜって、そんなのわからない。ただあの子たちとずっと助けられてばかりで、僕は何もできないから、 少しでも喜んでほしくて。
You made all of their lives infinitely worse.
みんなのことが好きで。
Tiger teleports out of the sky and lands on the boat, and they decide to turn around and help the friends. But the friends have it under control. Everyone is OP, and the Serval and Caracal doppelgangers get defeated really easily. Okay, they didn't need Kuryu's help at all. But he's here now. He gets here with Tiger to help them save the day, even though they already handled the threat without him. Suddenly, the place starts to collapse. Something hits the hotel and it begins falling apart. We don't know what hit the hotel, but it was something big, apparently. Everyone flees the crumbling building except for poor Tiger, who is abused by humans and is too frazzled to do anything but stand there, and she dies. Kuryu is responsible for the death of an endangered species who was abused by humans. He abandoned a dog and got an endangered species killed, and he's supposed to be the main character of Kemono Friends. Everybody watches their world crumble in front of them on the beach. There's 4 minutes left of the finale, and there's really no saving this trash fire. Kaban and Serval actually get a moment together for the very first time this season, and Kaban asks Serval if they were a good team together back in season 1.
面白い3人だね。
サーバルたちには負けるけど。
私たち？
キュルル、カラカル、サーバル。いいチームだと思う。
本当？やったー！
ねえ。私たちもそうだったかな。
おーい、サーバルー！そろそろ行くわよー！今行く！ごめん、なんだっけ？
なんでもない。
そっか。じゃあ。
All of that love in season 1 amounted to this? Serval leaving Kaban? And Kaban crying alone? When it comes to the writing in this season, there's an adage which is good to remember called Hanlon's razor. It tells us to never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. Keeping that in mind, how stupid do you need to be?
また会お
うね。サーバル。
約束だよ。カバンちゃん。
They even play the main theme from season 1 here to remind us of a better show, and they really rubbed the salt deep into that wound. Serval returns to Kuryu, who tells her that he doesn't need to search for home, because any place where his friends are is home. All of their bellies growl because they're all hungry now, and they laugh as the credits play. That's it. That's the show. There has been no season 3. The Kemono Friends anime is over now. Great. Fantastic. Remember when we used to like these characters? Earlier I said that Kuryu's arc could actually have been an effective villain arc. Consider this. A human wakes up in an unfamiliar place. He's scared and innocent, but then he meets animals which are willing to change their lives to help him. As they travel, he hears whispers about humans being superior to animals and being able to control them. He encourages animals to help him achieve his own goals, which seems innocent at first since everyone benefits. But as time passes, he starts to toy around with the idea that humans really are able to make animals do their bidding. Pretty soon, he starts neglecting his friends, leaving them behind without warning. This behavior worsens when he meets a dog who just wants to be his friend, but he willingly abandons them with a smile on his face because they might not be useful to him. His actions directly result in a large-scale conflict which he gets away with starting scot-free, and he lets an endangered species die without a second thought. On one hand, I can't say in earnest that this is his character arc, because he's a dope, and he seems to lack the basic intelligence that would be necessary for him to premeditate something so malicious. On top of that, the number of times he gets sidetracked by helping friends who did not need his help situate him as a character who is benevolent but not benign, always helping friends because of his immense love for them, and almost always needlessly complicating situations through his presence. On the other hand, all it would take for Kuryu to be recontextualized as a villain are for scenes to be added where he reflects on his actions. Nearly everything he did resulted in someone else being harmed or at least inconvenienced. Had he thought for 1 second about this fact, and then proceeded to develop like he did in the anime, never changing his ways and relying on others more and more, well, that simple act of premeditation would be enough to depict him as selfish and corrupting. The only reason he isn't a villain is because he never seems to think about his actions for long enough to realize that they're hurting others. Suffice it to say, not only is he an inferior protagonist standing where Kaban once stood, but he is an active threat who goes against the morals of Kemono Friends. Were there to be a Season 3 where he was recontextualized as a villain, it would not be out of character.
やっぱりあいつ何十も連れてきてくれとんねん。来るぞ。味方かもしれへんな。
This is especially true considering that he, if you remember, is the spawn of the Celian queen who defeated Serval 2,000 years ago. Had he defied his origin by saving the park in a way that only he was capable of doing, it could have been a strong character moment for him, like how Kaban grew to be like Mirai during Season 1, and we could track her growth by comparing her actions to those of Mirai. It would be like that, only this time, Kuryu would be growing against the queen, and his character growth could be tracked by contrasting his actions and hers. But instead, he isn't much better than a Celian. Also, let us not forget about the complete destruction of the timeline. Humanity is extinct? This takes place in the year 4000 AD, or CE, or whatever. The amount of damage this does to the Kemono Friends timeline is hard to overstate. For a show which succeeded by being positive in the face of danger, it sure was quick to exterminate all of humanity, huh? What story potential is left for a Season 3? They can't meet Mirai, since she's very literally a corpse now. There's no way for them to visit the human world since it either doesn't exist anymore or it's completely different from anything we can relate to. And what about the technology? How do all of these robots still work after 2,000 years? Wait, forget about the robots. How did Mirai's hat and hair survive for 2,000 years? And Serval, this is the same Serval who knew Mirai. Does she age? Are they seriously retconning Serval to be a 2,000-year-old lolly and systematically undoing every bit of praise I've given this series the whole time?
What the fuck were they thinking?
You might say I'm looking too deeply into this, but I never wondered about any of these things before they volunteered this info. It's really hard to stay Tenoshi now that everyone I know and love is canonically dead. This is chronologically the last story in the series, with all later stories being prequels. In one fell swoop, Season 2 killed all of the hope for the future that Season 1's positivity gave us. And if a Season 3 is ever made, I believe that they would have to retcon many of these ideas in order to bring back the hopeful tone of the show. That is how you kill a series. Remove the main characters, change the tone, and add so much lore that you limit future story possibilities. Season 2 did for Kemono Friends what The Matrix Reloaded did for the Matrix franchise. And climbing back up from there would be difficult. Chapter 6, Kemo Harmony, or The Redemption of Kemono Friends.